Samuel Post Davis was a colorful cuss. Born in Connecticut in 1850, he decided to become a newspaper man, and he did, joining a Nebraska paper fresh out of college. But Sam Davis had always felt the lure of the far West. By the late 1860s, he found himself in California, where he worked as a reporter for several Northern California papers covering the news from the isolated camps of the California gold rush country.
Extra, extra, big strike, near Angel's Camp, extra, extra.
But when news reached the diggings that there was a fabulous silver strike over Washaway, Sam Davis pulled up stakes and he headed for Nevada. Here was a brand new stake and a brand new strike, he reasoned. What better place to make his fortune? Davis made his way up to Virginia City, then the state's largest metropolis. The world was clamoring for news from Nevada, and Davis found work immediately, first as a reporter for the Chronicle, and later as a writer for the famous Territorial Enterprise, the most popular newspaper in the West. But by the late 1870s, Virginia City's future had begun to decline. Faced with thinning silver veins and the rising cost of underground operations, the mines and miners of Nevada looked about for greener pastures. Within 10 years, the population of the city dropped from more than 35,000 people to less than 10,000. Sam Davis promptly accepted the position of editor of the Carson City Appeal, the premier newspaper in Nevada's capital. If Mark Twain, a favorite Nevada son, was the nation's most famous humorist, Sam Davis was undeniably a peer. On slow news days when he had difficulty filling the pages of the Appeal, Davis often made up the news, and he made no bones about it. His sense of humor was legendary. On one occasion he wrote that a mysterious tunnel somehow connected Lake Tahoe and the mines of Virginia City, and he even offered up the body of half a frozen Tahoe resident found in a mine shaft as proof. He wrote that the sandstone quarried on the grounds of the Nevada State Prison, and from which many of Carson's homes and businesses were constructed, was peppered with gold. The story of the rich golden houses of Carson City made national headlines. When he lacked for editorial content, he simply created a rival newspaper. For more than a year, his Carson Appeal ranted and raved against the Wabusca Mangler, the rag which represented the small mining camp of Wabusca. Carsonites never knew until years later that the Mangler never actually existed. And Davis did not confine his literary genius to the press. He wrote countless poems and short stories, many of which appeared regularly in national magazines. In 1855, he published a book of short stories. He was fabled for his after-dinner speeches. But in 1899, he decided to enter into politics, and that's when the trouble began. He obtained the office of State Controller during that year. His job? Controlling the purse strings of the state of Nevada, and he took that job seriously. The new position brought Sam Davis almost immediately head-to-head with none other than the Nevada Supreme Court. That august body had just entered new quarters and had taken the opportunity to order some new chairs for the courtroom. The chairs were dutifully installed, and the bill was sent to Davis. The court was shocked when Sam Davis refused to pay. Davis based his refusal on an 1887 act of the legislature, which had created a board of commissioners solely responsible for furnishing state buildings. The commission, and not the Supreme Court, said Davis, was the only body which had the right to order furniture. He refused to honor the bill. Nevada's Attorney General, William Woodburn, came to Davis's aid. Woodburn agreed that the court had no authority to order furniture, and therefore there was no obligation on the part of the state controller to pay. As Sam Davis well knew, the state's newspapers were about to have a field day. To the side of the Supreme Court came Nevada's legal counsel, trimmer coffin. He held the position that the Supreme Court had inherent power to furnish its own courtroom, and cited early Roman and English history as precedent. He pointed out that as far back as the time of the famous Roman tribunal, marble benches had been installed. Was not the tribunal an ancestor of the modern court? Was not the Roman form of law passed down to England, where prototypes of its churches, assembly halls, and courtrooms eventually found their way to America? Did not the very phrase, sitting of court, synonymous with term of court or sessions of court, virtually imply that a courtroom should always be furnished with chairs? The Nevada Supreme Court has, wrote Coffin, the inherent power to provide for itself, at public expense, whatever is necessary for its comfort or for the transaction of its business. Continued the lawyer, the court must necessarily be the judge of what is needed. When the Nevada Supreme Court issued an opinion in the matter of its own chairs in April of 1902, Sam Davis must have already known the outcome, for he had been following the foibles of Carson City politics for more than 30 years. The court cited its inherent powers as a coordinate, an independent branch of government, and ordered Sam to pay for the chairs immediately from an account appropriated by the legislature for the payment of current expenses. Sam Davis now had another story to add to his famous after-dinner repertoire. When Sam Davis died in 1918, the Reno Evening Gazette praised his many achievements as a humorist, a writer, a reporter, and an editor. But they neglected to tell of the time when Sam Davis took on Nevada's venerable Supreme Court and refused to let its members be seated.